Hi, my name's Ken Sluiter, and I'm here at the Sweet Spot recording studio. This is a studio I work out of quite a bit and am involved in. And I'm going to talk to you today about mixing, specifically in the box mixing, as that is my preferred way to do it, and kind of getting known for that. And so we're just going to go through all those details. The track I'm going to mix today is from an act called the Workday release, and the song is called City Lights. This is a track that Warren produced. I specifically asked Warren for a track that I had nothing to do with the production, so I could just focus on just mixing and having a track that you're totally unfamiliar with, come to you in a file and just mixing it from scratch. And so that's what we're going to do today. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the Pro Tools session that Warren gave me. And the first step with this is we're going to just go through all the organization stuff. I like to get all the organizational stuff out of the way, so that way when you get into the mixing and you get into the music, you don't have to worry about any routing, any color coding, any of that stuff. You can just focus on the music. And but that does take a little bit of preparation. And if I was a celebrity mixer, I would probably have an assistant do this, but I'm fine to do it myself. It gives me a chance to kind of look at the tracks. This particular song is what we would call wide. It's a very wide, meaning lots of tracks, a high track count. And so what we need to do is we need to organize it in a way that's going to make it more manageable, and it's going to help me to learn and get my head around the song and what is happening with the song as quickly as possible. Because you don't want a mix to take forever, because one, these days, I mean, from a business point of view, you get hired with a mix fee per song. So the longer it takes, the less money you make. But B, you want to get momentum going. You want to get in the groove. A mix that you spend too much time on usually sounds pretty boring, and we don't want that. We want it to be exciting. We want it to be the opposite of boring. So we're going to it usually takes about 20 minutes for me from getting the files and organizing the files to getting them all routed and where I want them and getting it actually ready to start working on it. So here I'm looking at these files, and we have drums up here. And Warren has added some samples. I'm going to use those. I'm going to add some of my own as well. And we have kick in and out. We have like 3 tracks for the kick, 2 tracks for the snare, 3 tracks for the snare, floor tom, toms, overheads, mono overheads, 2 stereo pairs of rooms. So we have about 16, 18 tracks of drums. So that's a lot, but we're going to organize it in a way that's going to make it not feel like a lot. Warren has also printed some reverb returns, which is useful, and I might use that. Sometimes printing reverb returns, I always check it out and I always listen to it, because you want to know what people were going for. But a lot of times, say for example, if this plate is a kick and snare going into this plate, if I add some samples or EQ the snare, I might very well want my EQ'd snare with the sample tucked underneath it to go into that plate. Or maybe, I might want a different balance or something like that. Or say, for example, as we get down into the vocals, say you print a plate on a lead vocal, but if you haven't EQ'd and DS that vocal yet, then you're going to be sending uneq'd and unDS signal into the plate. But nevertheless, I'm glad to look at it, check it out. You get a sense of what people are going for, what vibe people are going for. But moving on, so that's the drum kit. And now we have some percussion. We have some cymbal overdubs, like on the downbeats of the choruses, and some explosion sounds, some percussion in the chorus, tambourine, that's pretty common. Some claps. There's like a clap pattern that happens throughout the song. You see that right here. We have 3 tracks of bass guitar. We have, 8 tracks of acoustic guitar. There's some electric guitar parts here. It looks like there's some, footballs or sort of, rakes across the chorus. if I haven't even heard the song, I can look at it and I can kind of tell what the stuff's doing, because it's, for this particularly, it's contemporary pop music. There's a formula to it, and without getting too into an artistic discussion, you know, the creativity is how can you be creative and still follow the rules of the formula, and that's what we're seeing here when we look on the screen, and we can see what's happening. I see that there's some muted guitar DIs. A lot of times people will record DI guitars with the intention of reamping. And that's just as a little aside, since we're talking about DIs, if we have a second here. A lot of people will say, I don't like to record the DI of a guitar because I don't want somebody else deciding what kind of guitar tone we're gonna pick later. I want to be a part of that, which is true, because when you play guitar, if you're a guitar player, the sound you're hearing out of the speakers, you're interacting with that guitar. It's a feedback loop with your performance. However, a DI is always welcomed to a mixer or a Pro Tools editor, because if nothing else, particularly a lot of the metal guys, and I don't really do the genre of metal too much, but when I have, or anything with a lot of heavily saturated, distorted guitars that's very riff heavy, sometimes if you have to tighten up that riff and tighten that to the drums, you can see the stroke of the pick on the DI track, so you use that visually as a reference, because the guitar track itself, which we see here, because it's got a bit of distortion on it, you might have a slightly harder time seeing the stroke. This one isn't too bad, but the point being is that a DI guitar is always welcomed. You don't have to use it. Now, one other thing I'll mention here as I'm going through it is I have a policy of, for me, in a perfect world, my fantasy is to never see, if you look up here, you see this orange mute button. To me, a mute on a console is for trying something out. If I don't want to hear it, I either want the track muted manually, you know, by Command M, or I'll make it inactive. And the one reason why is because there's many reasons why, but one of which is that you get working fast and you're using your modifier keys and you're turning on groups, soloing groups, muting groups of things to check it out. If there's something that you don't want in your arrangement, then I don't want any chance of it accidentally turning on, especially when you get into these dense, very wide, very high track count sessions, because it becomes hard to keep track of. So if I have no intention of using these DIs, I'm going to make them inactive. And if I'm going to scroll through here and I'm going to look and I'm going to say, okay, well, look at, there's a timpani here. Well, it came to me muted. If something comes to me muted as a mixer, I'm making it inactive. I'm probably not going to use it. If they didn't want it, when in doubt, leave it out. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if you're not sure whether it should be in the mix or not, it should probably not be in the mix. So I'm not looking to add more things into a 80-track mix. So now, if you see, the mute button over here near the counter up on top is off, which means that if I'm, say for example, if I'm going through the drums and I'm listening and I'm trying to understand, okay, well, what's going on with the snare drum? You know, I'm getting, you know, some sound or some EQ or something I want to check out. I now use my mutes to sort of diagnose things and check things out. But I don't leave anything muted. If I intend on leaving something out, I'm going to make it inactive, or I'm even going to hide it. And actually, you'll see as I go through this, when I add my tracks and all my routing into this, it's going to be insane with the amount of faders that we use. But as I start making decisions, I'm going to start cleaning the session up as I go, because the idea is that you want the session to be as clean and straightforward as possible. So that's what I think about that. So heading down here, also, if something's grayed out, I'm taking it out. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it. If something's grayed out here, same thing. I'm going to take it out. Because for me, it helps me understand the arrangement if I just see the regions and clips empty. So all that stuff here I'm going to clean up. As far as I'm concerned, those decisions have been made. we're done. Every now and then you might see a grayed out like count off from drums. You might need to leave those in because you might need them. But in the mix stage, we're done with overdubs. We don't need them anymore. They're gone, out of here. All this stuff here, it's out of here. And now if somebody asks me for them back, then I go and I reopen the original session and import it or do something like that. And I'll even go so far as to say, for example, you see all these cymbal rolls. Well, this only happens here and here, so I'm going to get rid of all that, and I'm going to get rid of all that, because it helps me see what's happening and when it's happening. So I'm cleaning up, I'm cruising along here. That, we don't need any of that business there. There, all that's gone. So you get the idea. Same thing, get rid of this, get rid of that. It's gone, it's done. And that would be, you know, as a sidebar, if you're a producer or an artist and you're sending your mixes out to a mixer, with exception, most mixers don't want options. In other words, try to make all your creative and arrangement decisions before you send it to the mixer. Because if I'm going to mix a song, I don't want to give you my mix and then another option, because then if you throw in some changes, now we have two mirrors like pointing at each other. It creates like a feedback loop of options. And the whole idea of mixing is making decisions, not creating more options. So my advice is that most mixers appreciate as many creative arrangement decisions made as possible. So I'm kind of going through here and I'm cleaning up stuff. Let me see if there's anything to discuss here. The synth bass, I'm going to move the synth bass by the basses over here. So I'm going to reorganize these tracks. Every now and then, if I'm mixing and I'm organizing a track, and it's a one-way trip, meaning this track is done and it's just being mixed, there's no one editing and tightening the tracks, the artist isn't overdubbing on top of the track while I'm mixing something that's actually not done, then I can do whatever I want and I can reorganize it. If you get yourself into a situation where you're working on a project, but you know that, say for example, I'm starting a mix, but we have a Pro Tools editor in another state who's tightening up the drums still, and he's going to go through and he's going to tighten up the drums, and he's going to tighten up the bass and tune the vocals and do whatever sort of refinements need to be made, it might serve you to leave the tracks in the order that you originally had them. So as you import the tracks, or if you're still collaborating with people, it just makes it a lot easier and more straightforward. But that's not the case here, so I get to do what I want as far as organization goes. So I'm going down here, here's all the keyboards, here's a piano track. Say for example here we have a piano performance that's 3 tracks, but I really just want to deal with it as a stereo track. So I'm just going to create an aux input, and I'm going to name it piano aux. For me, piano is short for piano. I always like to copy and paste the title of the track into the comments, because when you're looking at the mix window, it's much easier to find. And then I'll take these. And also, if you can see, I use a lot of modifier keys. So just go to a bus 25. I'll rename that. While I have that track name in my clipboard, I can just quickly rename that. Go to this input, find my piano aux. And also, the way I like to work, and there's reasons for doing it other ways, but for me, I like to solo safe the aux tracks, so that way I can listen to these guys without having to solo 2 tracks at once. And now if I want to EQ the piano, I have it right here. I'm ready to go. I don't have to, and if I want to turn the piano up and down, I have it all on one fader. I mix on a laptop. And my laptop is actually a 2012 MacBook Pro. So it's Pro Tools HD native. And by HD, meaning that the software itself is HD, but the hardware runs on third-party stuff. At the moment, I'm using an Apollo. I love the UAD plugins. I'll use those a lot. We'll get to those in a bit. And I use one of these little Avid Artist mixes. And when I can, I like to have that little Avid control app in which I just have some customized quick keys that for whatever reason aren't mapped, are not a part of the standard quick keys for Pro Tools. With quick keys, back when I was starting in Pro Tools, there was actually a company that's probably still around called Quick Keys, where you could custom write your quick keys. And those were really cool, and a lot of sort of Pro Tools wizard, Pro Tools jockeys would use quick keys, or keyboard maestro, I think is one now. And those are really cool. I recommend that you learn all the stock keyboard shortcuts as well as you can, because if you become a wizard in Pro Tools on all your custom quick keys, and then suddenly you're in a studio where it's not your computer and you don't know how to do the things that you want to do, suddenly you're going to be going from 100 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour, and you don't want that. So at the very least, learn all the keyboard shortcuts. In native systems in general, compared to like an HD, what would they call it now? HD DSP system, meaning proprietary Avid cards like HDX cards or even older TDM cards. Those are better for studios where you do a lot of tracking and you need your system to be bulletproof, meaning that you can put it in record for an hour and it's going to stay in record and you can count on it. It's like as reliable as a tape machine would be. A native system, every now and then you're going to get some color wheels here and there. My system is designed for mixing. I'm not sitting here with, Beyonce doing my mixing. So if I get a color wheel every now and then, it's not a big deal. I don't mind it. It is what it is. So anyway, my point is stuff like these 3 tracks of piano, I just wanted on one fader. So I created a little AUX. What do we have here? Harmony piano lead. Let me take a look at that and see, okay. So that's interesting. I'm just going to take that, put it there, go up here, drop that onto there. Take these and hide them. Because I don't see any special plugins on those. I'm not sure why that would be on a few other tracks. It probably made sense at the time. But for me, I'm just going to put them all on one track. Now we're into the vocals. Vocals are going to... It's very common now to see 2 tracks of vocals, meaning this is a verse, this is a chorus. And oftentimes, and let's take a look here. Oftentimes, this note will hang over this note here, and so they can't, and they do a little bit. In other words, this note here at the end of the pre-chorus actually overlaps with the downbeat of the chorus, and it might do it here as well. Yeah, a little bit. I've seen more overlap. And here especially, you see that note is being held out while he comes in with his bridge melody. So it makes sense to have it on 2 tracks. There are some vocal effects that are printed, but again, like I said, I might make some changes to these vocals, and I want those changes to be reflected in the effects, and I have my own effects. But I do like that they're there, and so I'm going to make it inactive, and I'm going to refer to them if I need to or if I get lost. Here's a double, some harmonies, some chorus doubles. We got a bunch of oohs. Okay, when I see stacks of vocals like this, in my mind, I say, okay, guess what? It's time for another AUX. And so I make another AUX. You quickly grab all these guys, move it to an AUX. Let's call it Vox AUX. So I've renamed the bus. And then I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to name that there, copy it onto there. Right, hopefully. And now we have all these vocals, all these oohs and ahs are are going onto one fader, so I can just blend that guy in as I need. So, so that's that. And it's also worth mentioning, I think that Warren probably worked on this production or mixed it on a console. So what he has done here is all the faders are at 0 and all the pan pots are straight up and down. So it's a flattened mix, which is appreciated. That's a totally valid way to send someone a mix. In my world, and the first thing I'm going to do is take it and turn all these guys down, and I'm going to start this mix from scratch. That said, a lot of times people will send me a Pro Tools session. If you're going to send a Pro Tools session to a mixer, always send a rough mix of the best that you could get it, or the last. I want to hear what the artist has taken home to listen to and what they're used to hearing. And when I open up a mix and I see it, like 10 guitar tracks, say for example, with a little mix built in them, I'm going to work off that mix because that tells me where they had it in mind. So I'm not going to flatten the faders. If I see a mix, I'm going to continue with that mix. I'm going to use that mix as a starting point. Also, even more importantly, is panning. If you have a bunch of guitars and one is panned hard left and one is panned hard right, and this one is halfway here and this one's there and this one's a little bit over to the left or right, that tells me that that's where you guys wanted those guitars to be spread out in the stereo field. And unless I totally disagree with something and think it needs to be another direction, in general, I'm just going to go with that. And it's not because I'm trying to be lazy. It's because I want to add to what you've done. I don't want to change necessarily, unless I really think it needs to be changed. So anyway, and now we're getting down to the bottom, and there is a mix here. So that's appreciated. It's good to have a mix, whether it be, sometimes it's a rough mix from the producer who might not be a mixer. Sometimes it's a rough mix from the artist. Sometimes you're remixing something that someone else's mix that they're not happy with. Sometimes you're mixing, and I've had situations where I'm mixing a song and someone down the hall is mixing the same song, and someone in another state or in another country is also mixing the same song, and all 4 of them are going to be presented to the artist, and they're going to pick and choose what they like. So, it's nice to have access to what the artist is used to hearing. So this is about I'm going to show you like the before and after. The next session I'm going to open up is going to be me organizing all these tracks, and I'll walk through that. A couple other little things that help with the screen real estate. I mentioned earlier that I want to see as many tracks on the screen as possible, so I don't need to see the samples. I don't need to see the meter. I don't need to see the tempo. All I care about seeing on the timeline is, let's just go main ruler only, bars and beats, and I like to see time. I don't need to see other displays. There's this universe that can go away. I like it to be as nice and clean and as neat as possible. One thing I want to mention, I find most people in most apps use save as a way of working on a copy of a file. When I crack open a Pro Tools session, I'm just excited to get to it, and I start getting to it. And sometimes I'll forget to save as. And so what I do is instead of doing a save as, I go into the Finder and I copy a session. So the session right here that's called KS Mix Prep was actually just me taking this, highlighting it, and then renaming it. And I think that that's the best way to do it, because what happens is I can't rename it that exact thing because it'll tell me that it won't do that. But then when I open this up, I know that I'm already working on the copy of the track. Okay, so now here we are. You see I've cleaned it up a bit. I'm going to go through a few things. One is in the markers, I like to clean up the intros, or I like to clean up all the names. Intro, verse 1, PC 1, chorus 1, verse 2, PC 2, chorus 2, bridge, PC 3, chorus 3. So all that's labeled. Also, I like all the markers to be not kind of, if somebody has a little pickup note before the downbeat, don't put the intro here. I want the intro on the grid. Are you gonna work with me? What's going on? Oh, absolute grid. Here we go. like that. Verse 1 right on the grid. As I'm working along, I like to be able to see, okay, yeah, the verse 1 is 8 bars and know exactly what I'm seeing, knowing that the pre-chorus is 8 bars, that this little break here is 2 bars. I love working on a grid. A lot of people, the grid gets a bad rap sometimes, but it's really good for me. I use it all the time. And that doesn't mean that everything needs to be lined up to it. It doesn't mean that everything has to be lined up in the perfect line. But as far as actually working and navigating your way around a session, I like the grid. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is I like to have, my very first track is my mix track. And right now I have, you know, what I typically call the rough. I don't know, this might have been a final mix, but whatever mix, whatever stereo mix is going to be on the top. And then I label all my drums one color. I like to pick this brown, and we'll just kind of go through it here. You can make whatever color you want. Just be methodical and do it every time. So drums, I tend to pick this dark brown. Percussion, I usually go with purple, P for percussion. So all my percussion is in purple. Timpani, we're going to get rid of. We don't want it. Bass is in blue. Blue for bass. All guitars are in green. Green for guitars. I'll often make them different shades of green. For example, this acoustic is one shade of green, and all the electric guitars are another shade of green. All my keyboards are in yellow, and the piano's a different shade of darker yellow. Lead vocals and any lead vocal related stuff is always in red for me. And then usually the vocals, the backing vocals are in doubles and stuff are usually some sort of orange or orange variation of that. You don't need to use my colors. You can use whatever colors you want, but just be methodical about it. And now as we're scrolling through this session, if we just take a look, it's just a lot more, it's a lot less intimidating when you can just see that, you know, there's a ton of drum tracks, but they're all there. They're all labeled drums, percussion, bass, all the guitars, electric guitars, keyboards, piano, vocals, backing vocals. And that's it. So that's where I'm at with the mix setup. All the faders are at 0. And so what I'm going to do is, the way I like to do this is go all the way down to the very end of the session. And then I do my import session data. And I go to my latest fall template. My template's always changing, always evolving, but this is my latest one. Open that up. You know what? I'm going to actually open up the template first. I'm going to walk through that. Let's do that. That'll be exciting. Because what's going to happen is I have the multi-track Pro Tools session and I have my template. I need to merge the two together. So let me find that template. Here is my raw templates. This has no audio in it at all. This is just my mixing starting point. And make it manageable to look at here. Yeah, okay, great. So we're going to start at the top. So my first track I called Ref Master Print. And what that is that's my mix. That's my mix that I send to the client for approval, meaning it has a little bit of level added to it. It's not trying to compete with a finished master, but if you send a mix at the level that you would send to a mastering engineer to a client, your list of revisions is going to be much longer because they're going to put it into a playlist and compare it to commercial CDs or their Spotify playlist. And they won't be able to relate. It will sound small. It'll sound not as big, not as wide. So you need to send it. I send it a little bit hotter. So I have that ready to go. Now this right here, now a lot of people, you hear about, take your fake mastering off of your mix before you send it to mastering, which is true. So what I have is I have a ref master print and then a mix print. And that's a different track with a different set of routing that I use. And I know that these files here that print to this track are going to go to the mastering engineer. These files go to the client for approval. Hope that makes sense. I also have a mix bus meter. For some reason, this one plugin's not happy with me, so we're going to just show another one. I can use this. flux stereo tool. What I have is, in other words, I have my mix bus, right? All the tracks go into the mix bus, and then they print onto a track. Some people do a bounce to disk. I never do a bounce to disk, and a lot of people will discuss the differences between bounce to disk sonically. I think that there was a period of time when that might have been true. I think more often than not, what it may have been is that automation might have been latent, meaning that the automation moves might not have been happening in the exact same time as they were when you're listening to the track. I don't really, I've never noticed bounce to disk sounding worse, so I don't do it for sonic reasons, I do it for logistical reasons, one of which is that I want to be able to quickly compare different mixes. I want to be able to take the mix I sent and pop this thing on input and playback and hear the differences between that mix, whether it be listening to my mix version 1 against my mix version 2, hearing my mix version 1 compared to the rough mix, just all sorts of reasons. So that's why I mix to a print track as opposed to bouncing to disk. The other reason why is sometimes I'll just go, and if somebody just wants one fix in one little spot, I just go record into that little spot and consolidate the file and send it. It's much quicker than running a song all the way down from the top. When I send mixes to mastering engineers, I never consolidate because I have a client who is convinced that he could hear the difference, and I'll respect that. So I do that. But anyway, point being is that, and I'm going to walk through this slowly because this is sort of a tangled web of routing. So I'm going to make these all a little bit bigger. But everything on the top of my Pro Tools session is my mix print routing, okay? And so we're going to go through it here. The top one, as I mentioned, is my client, the mix I send to my client. This one right here is my mix that I send to mastering. This one right here is feeding off the mix bus, and it goes to no output. And all that is it's a metering program. And I just keep that over on another screen, and that's what I use to get my levels. Right here, I have a track that's inactive, and it has a little phase meter on it. If I ever need to compare two different mixes, I just make this active, and if I have a mix file, I'll just drag it onto here, and it already has a trim plugin that is out of phase. Say, for example, you get a mix, and you brighten up the guitars, because I asked you to brighten up the guitars. But then your client says to you, well, now the vocals are really dull. How did you change the vocals? And you say to yourself, well, I didn't change the vocals, I changed something else. I could see why it would seem like the vocals are duller because I've made something else in the mix brighter. But oftentimes before you tell someone that they're wrong, you need to check for yourself. So what you do is you compare mix 1 with mix 2, and if the only thing you did was brighten up the guitars, then you should only hear the top end of the guitars and everything else should more or less cancel. Reverbs oftentimes don't cancel, but a lead vocal should cancel completely. So it's worth it to build into your template a little test jig, I call it, which is a little out of phase plugin that goes to the monitor. Now I have my mix insert setting, which you see is coming from the mix bus. And this has all my mix plugins on it, right? And then that feeds, this mix insert feeds both the mix insert feeds the ref master insert where I add my little level, which I do with an Oxford limiter, and it also feeds the mix bus, which doesn't have any limiting on it at all. One of the many wonderful things about mixing in the box is the routing ability that you have and the flexibility you have in routing in Pro Tools is along the lines of a large format mixing console. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about is double busing. And what double busing means is, say for example, this track I have highlighted called Mix Insert is going to two different places at once. And I can show you which paths those are by just taking my cursor and hovering over it, and it shows you. It's going to the mix print and the ref master bus. So this signal here is going to this track up here and that track there at the same time. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Also, I have another thing here called Overdub monitor, which is what this track is for is, say for example, I'm mixing a track. I have tons of plugins on it. The more plugins you put onto a track, the bigger your system delay is. And you can check your system delay by going into session setup and looking. And right now, my system delay is at 4,363 samples, which means that if I tried to overdub a guitar onto this session as it is, I'm going to hear a ton of latency. And a lot of that latency is caused by my mix processing chain. So I can bypass that by just taking this monitor, turning it off, and turning this guy on. And now I'm not listening to any of that. I'm not listening through any of those plugins. If somebody needs to overdub a backing vocal or a tambourine or a last-minute overdub during a mix session, I have the ability to do that without turning off a bunch of plugins. And the one reason why I don't love turning off plugins is because, as you can see in my mix insert, I have a few different things here. And I'll try a different combination of the two. What I try to do with my template in general, as we scroll through it here, and you can probably see it better here, is I have all the plugins that I think I want kind of ready to go. And we'll get more into that later. But if I go and I turn off these plugins and I make these inactive to create an acceptable amount of latency to do an overdub, I might forget which I had set up. And I don't want to do that. So I'd rather just make the entire track inactive and use this, which has the same routing. So I hope that makes sense. So carrying on down the line. So now we've done our overdub monitor. And now I have a VCA here. VCAs, I don't know if VCAs are available in Pro Tools Standard or if that's still just an HD only function. But the idea is, well, think about it this way. Say say you're working with the White Stripes and it's 8 tracks at the most, right? Well, 8 tracks on a mixing console, those faders can be up nice and loud. But the more tracks you add, the more energy, the more faders you're adding to a mix, the more each fader needs to come down in order to fit all that level onto a mix bus. So even though Pro Tools has a ton of headroom and it doesn't, Pro Tools doesn't have a sweet spot the way an analog console does, but in my opinion, there is the plugins and everything that you use has a sweet spot. So what I try to do is when I get everything in here and once I merge these two sessions together, the first thing I do is I try to get a rough mix with everything in as much as possible, particularly the kick drum and the bass guitar and the stuff that is going to define the headroom of your mix. And then I put all those in a group and I have that group controlled by this track trim VCA. And so I'll spend a lot of time trimming my mix. And the sooner you can trim a mix, the happier you're going to be, because if you're trimming a mix late in the game of a mix, you're going to start changing the sound of your mix. So the more faders you can get up and the quicker you can get to a good solid rough mix and then trim that back to make sure you have headroom to really ride something is going to make your entire mixing experience sound better. It will feel like you're working on a mixing console with endless headroom. So I have a track trim VCA ready to go. Now I have all my kicks and snare samples all in here ready to go. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. I have all my drum routing. I have everything that I'm going to want to do to my kick, snare, toms, kit, and room mics all set up in subgroups that I will route the individual tracks to so I can turn on and off plugins and dial those in and trim those around. And they have the reverbs and everything set to go. So say, for example, here with my kick drum, I have a kick drum, I have a Slate VMR with a bunch of stuff inactive except for this EQ that's ready to go. And then as I need to, I can pop these things on and either EQ them some more, compress them some more, or give them a little bit of distortion. Every now and then I like to put a little bit of lo-fi on. So, I have that not active, but ready to go. And you know what, this is an important thing to know about Pro Tools, is that bypass is different than an active. Bypass means that you're not hearing the plugin, but the latency is still there. And inactive means inactive is the equivalent to that plugin not being in the chain at all. So I have that ready to go. On my sends, I have my drum reverbs ready to go. Whether that be 224, 480L, Ocean Way UAD plugin. I have some sends going to all my parallel compression, which is oftentimes like a mono drum crush. I think this is a stereo drum crush. This is a drum distortion send. So if I want to distort my kick and snare a little bit, it's all ready to go. Same thing with the snare, basically the same thing. The point being is I have a bunch of plugins that I like sort of at the ready to go. Toms, right here, this can be muted and active. These are mono kick and snare subs. These days I'm using stereo kick and snare subs simply because some of the samples that I use are stereo samples. If a sample comes in from a client, it's oftentimes stereo, it's ready to go. I have a VCA ready to trim the entire drum kit up and down if I need it to be. I have some parallel compression ready to go. In my world, I like, for me, equal sign right there means parallel compression. So anything that is with an equal sign means that it's a send and receive, a send and return parallel compression. I have an 1176. I have the new Slate Distressor plugin ready to go. Fairchild 670, the Slate Monster SSLs 33609. So rather than, for me, I don't want to go scrolling through menus of plugins trying to find just the right one. I have everything I like kind of ready to go, and then I just turn on and off these tracks until I hit the combination that I like. I'll have my reverbs ready. My go-to is an RMX16. Sometimes I'll use a plate reverb. Sometimes I'll use a 224 or 480L, the Ocean Way, as I mentioned. Sometimes I'll run a UAD Fatso in parallel. There's a distortion, which is usually Decapitator or maybe the Sans amp. Right here is a AUX for beatbox. If there's like drum programming, drum machines, those will just go into the beatbox. Parallel compression for the beatbox. I have a little reverb setting on a 224 that's kind of ready to go. Again, inactive, but it'll be there when I need it. Bass guitar sub. Okay, so that's all the drums and percussion and drum beats. Bass guitar sub, so that way if a bass comes in and it's, it's not uncommon to see a bass DI and then maybe like a dynamic and a condenser microphone on the bass cabinet. Those can all go to one sub. They're ready to go. I have some parallel bass compression on the send ready to go. These parallel compressions are all the way down, and then I just turn them up as I need them to be. I have some distortion that I can blend into the bass. I have some modulation, which is oftentimes like a little micro pitch shift, or sometimes it's like a chorus sound. I have a little bit of reverb, which I like. It's usually the Ocean Way room. And then I have some parallel guitar compression ready to go, some guitar reverb ready to go, some keyboard parallel compression ready to go. And then I have a track here for lead vocals, and if you notice, they're all colored in that color scheme that I was pointing out earlier. And I have a lead vocal track, and if the entire track comes to me where the entire lead vocal is on one track, I'll often just drag that onto this track. If it comes overlapped the way this one is, then I just route it into the lead vocal sub. It has all the same routing ready to go. I have an 1176 in parallel. I have a Fairchild 660 in parallel. I have a what I call the echo throw, and what this is that I have a send right here, and this send is set at 0, already ready to go. And instead of routing that send to a reverb, I actually route it into a track, and then route that track into a reverb. And then if I want to tag certain words on the vocal with echo, like say the end of the line, I just ride it on a fader. And it's faster for me to do that. I have a mod throw if I want to add a little bit of chorus on a certain line or a vocal. Sometimes the name of the song. If the name of the song is in the verse and it's not a part of the hook, I might just add a little chorus onto there just to give it a little sparkle. So that's ready to go. And then here's all the returns of all my lead vocal tracks here. I have a tag echo. I have a regular echo, which is just an echo that's just going the entire time, usually in time with the song. I have a Lexicon 224, Lexicon plate, or not like EMT plate. It's usually one or the other, not both. A slap back ready to go. I have a micro pitch shift ready to go. Sometimes I'll use a Cooper time cube. Sometimes I'll use a little modulation. I don't know what I have going here. The fix doubler. And then all those returns are controlled by a VCA that it's set at unity. And say there's a breakdown to a song where it goes to just the acoustic guitar and the vocal, and you just want to turn all the effects down in one shot. You just go right over to the bridge and you just turn that down, and it turns down all the returns and then brings them back up. Okay, so hopefully all that makes sense. And then finally, well, not finally, and then I have some subs reserved for the backing vocals. Say I have a group of backing vocals I want to treat all together. Instead of running them into my what I call alls, which I'll get to in a moment, I have a sub ready for the backing vocal subs. I have some plates and reverbs that are backing vocal only. I try not to mix lead vocals and backing vocal reverbs, because sometimes if I have to stem a session out and I want to do it in one pass, if you cross-pollinate your reverb sends and returns like you would on an analog console, then you have to do separate passes of each one. And we'll get to that in a bit. And then I have what I call my all tracks, which is all drums, all percussion, all bass, all guitars. And sometimes I'll do guitars A, B, and C, and D, keyboards A, and B, and C, and D, all strings and horns. And you see strings and horns are inactive because a lot of songs don't have them, but if I do need them, they're ready to go. I'll do an all Vox A and an all Vox B. In case there's a duet or two singers, then you can have them running out separate chains. And all backing vocals A and all backing vocals B. Say, for example, I'll put all the verse harmonies, and all the harmonies that are harmonies to the melody line will go through A, but then all the gang vocals or all the chorus vocals will go into B. Then I have a bunch of parallel compression here, and I have an 1176 LA2A. I have this Clang Helm, which is this like $30 plugin that sounds kind of like a Gates. And I have a Fairchild 660, the UAD Zener, the Chandler Zener limiter. And what this is this is compression that is usually comprised of the kick and snare and a little bit of the bass guitar. And I'll usually blend those in as well. And so those are done from the alls as well. So after the alls, they go into there. And now each one of those all tracks is controlled by a VCA. And the reason why is because when the whole record is done and it's finished, I can take these VCAs, highlight them, go to the coalesce VCA master automation. And what it does is coalescing VCA master automation takes all the VCA information and it zeroes out the VCA faders, and it puts those moves, it builds them into the track. And it's complicated to show without an example, so I'll try to get to that once we actually merge these two sessions together. But the VCAs are there, so when the mix is all finished, I coalesce them, which moves all the VCAs at 0, and then as I do my vocal up, vocal down, more guitar, less guitar, I have 8 faders at 0, that if I want to do more drums, a dB more drums, I just turn up that VCA 1 dB. If I need more bass, I can just turn that up 1 dB. Orchestra, whatever. And then I have a bunch of stems tracks that if I want to, I can open up these stem tracks and I can print all these groups of tracks in one pass onto stems. Now, the thing about that is there's 2 ways to do it. If I print them like that, these are the stems before the stereo mix processing. So if you add all those stems together from the single pass stem, it's not going to sound exactly like your mix because you're not printing it's not going through your stereo processing. If I do that single pass of stem, that isn't going to represent the entire mix, but for some purposes, say for example you're working on a mix and suddenly somebody decides they're going to record an orchestra on it and you need to send stems to a soundstage, you can do that in one pass. all kinds of different reasons to do it. At the same time, if you print your groups one at a time, say I have 8 groups of instrument tracks and I need to print stems, so I print them in 8 passes, it's still going to sound different because your stereo compression isn't being hit as hard as it would be if the entire mix was going through it. So it's kind of impossible to have stems equal a final mix. And I know people who do side chain compression, and there's all these different tricks to do it. That's too complicated for me. I just know that that's the way it is. I accept it as the mix is the mix. So we'll get into more of that. So in my next step, I'm going to show you merging the multi-track session with my mix template and doing all the routing. All right, so now we're back into the original multi-track session. I've cleaned it up. I've labeled stuff the way I like it. I have the color scheme I like it, but currently everything's going out outputs 1 and 2. I want them to go into my template. So what I'll do is I'll go into import session data, navigate my way to my mix template right here. Ignore that. Highlight everyone here and bring it in. So what you're going to see now is a lot of faders. And so what we want to do is we still haven't actually listened to the mix. And I can do this whole process in 15, 20 minutes if I'm not explaining it. So, you know, once you get used to it, it goes pretty fast. Okay. So let's just review here. We're going to look at the top of the session. Top of the session here is all of our tracks. And then as you see, I go down, get through the tracks, and you see all my template sessions. So real quick, before I start merging the two together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to get rid of anything I know I don't need. Okay, I know I need all this stuff here. I need drums. I need all my drum stuff. I don't need the beatbox stuff because there are none on this track. So those go away. I'm going to hide the tuning because I don't think I need. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you're sending a track to a mixer, don't assume he's going to tune your vocals for you. That's a different step. And if he does, be glad. Oftentimes you'll just put a playback auto tune on there. That's not really how you should tune a lead vocal. A lead vocal should be tuned by hand properly. But that's. I don't think I'm going to need these subs here. And I don't think I'm going to need any of these backing vocal stuff because backing vocals I'll oftentimes use shortcuts. There's no horns, there's no effects on here, so I'm going to get rid of that. So at this point now, I'm getting rid of some stuff I don't need. That should not have been muted. I'm going to take all these stems and I'm going to mute those as well. So, hide them. And there's no orchestra, so I'm going to hide that as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put everything in the order that I want it. So I'm going to merge these guys together. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to grab all my stereo stuff, which is right here. And I'm going to drag these up to the top. I'm going to take this rough mix here and put it right there, ready to go. Don't know why this isn't active. Should be active. There it goes. So now I'm going to take this guy here and hide it because it's redundant, right? And I'm going to take this phase track and I'm going to hide it here because I don't need it yet. And I don't think I need this overdub monitor, so I'll hide that. As few of faders as you can have possible, the happier you will be. I'm going to take all these drums. So these are all drum tracks. And I'm going to move them up to right in front of the drums. Just like that. I'm going to take the kick stuff and I'm going to put it right past the kick. Also, I'm going to tweak this here a little bit. For me, that little money sign, that means sample, kick sample. I usually like to order it with the real stuff first and then the samples right behind it, right after it. Because ideally, That's how I want to mix it as well. I want the real stuff to be the loudest stuff and the samples just behind there. Kick. Put the snare stuff right there, and then we're good. And then I'm going to keep all the drum subs are right here in one little area. And now I have my percussion stuff. So let's skip down. I only have one track percussion verb. Put that. You know, stuff like these risers and reverse cymbals, sometimes if there's a lot of that, if you're doing like a really modern pop thing, there'll be risers and things like turbines, that kind of stuff. That's sort of effects, and there's a subgroup for that. But if I just see one or two of them, I'm just going to put them in with the percussion. So anyway, now we have bass stuff. These are all my bass tracks in blue. I'll put them right here behind the bass. Carrying on, I have my guitar stuff right here. Put that right behind the guitars. I have my keyboard stuff right here. Put that right here, put behind the piano. And then I have all my lead vocal stuff. Lead vocals from here to here are all going to go right after these lead vocals, which are right here. Now, when I was talking earlier about like overlapped lead vocals, I mentioned that I have a lead vocal track and a lead vocal sub, and I'll use one or the other. Because these overlap a little bit, this track right here can go away, and I'm going to route those into the sub. And these lead vocal stuff, we're just going to keep down there. We're just going to keep them inactive. And we can leave all that as it is. And then all my subs and alls are going to live down here. So anyway, cruising along. Now I have to route the stuff. So I grab all my kick tracks. Instead of going out 1 and 2, I want them to go out kick sub stereo, snare drum sub stereo, and I want to make sure that yeah, and my kick drum samples, same thing. Those are actually, they default to the mono, but because I know I have a stereo sample involved, I'm going to move all these to the stereo sub. And stereo sub, which is just this guy here, goes to stereo sub. Okay, floor toms, go to tom sub. I usually like the hi-hat and the ride together. I listen to this track down and the hi-hat does not play, so it's going to go away. We don't need more mics going shh in general. Oftentimes on a pop track, you might not see the ride until the bridge. I'll mute the entire track up until the bridge, and I just sneak that in where I need it. So mono, overhead, and hat, I put out just kit. Where are we here? Kit sub, great. Mono kit, room high, room low, and talk back, and drum plate. I'll move that out. Drum room sub. There we go. So those are all going to those subs here. All this percussion stuff here. Instead of going out 1, 2, it's going to go out perk all perk. There we go. Bang. Bass. Okay, so now we have our bass guitar. It's going to go out bass guitar sub. Our synth bass is going to go out bass synth sub. Sometimes there's more than one synth bass, you'd be surprised. Guitars, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these guys out guitar A. Where are you? All guitars A. I'm going to put these guys out guitar B. All guitars B. Now, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that this guitar 6 and guitar 7 look like the exact same file. So here's something to do. As I was saying, I was going through this and I found 2 guitar tracks that by looking at the clips and the name and number, they appear to be redundant. That comes up, that happens every now and then. The quickest way to make sure that that is the case is to open up any plugin that has a phase switch. And see right now, here's this track playing. It gets louder because now there's 2. Flip the phase, they completely cancel. That means I can take this track and get rid of it. So that's the quickest way to make sure. You don't want any tracks that are redundant on here. It's going to make things complicated. So anyway, moving on, I have some more keyboards here. All these keyboards, I'm going to go out to the all keys. Let's just go all keys A. I'll move the piano onto all keys B. And now I take the lead vocals and I send them out the lead vocal sub. So now these are going to flow here. And I into here, right where they belong, with all the all my compression starting. And then backing vocals, I'll take, for example, all these guys here, and I'll put these up, backing vocal A. In the ooze, and their reverb return. I'll use that. That looks like it would sound good. I'll put that out B. So now everything's routed, and now I've merged the multi-track with my template. And you can do that at any sample rate. One thing I'll mention here, I believe that this is at 48K, and I probably wouldn't do it on this track because it's so wide, has so many tracks. But if something comes into me at 48K and it's like under 40 tracks, I'll often upsample it to 96K. And it might seem like that might not make any sense because you can't add resolution to an audio file. Meaning if an audio file is printed at 48K and then you upload it to 96K, all you have is empty bits. You're not going to get any more resolution on the audio. And that's true. However, your mixing architecture is now running at twice the resolution as a 48K mix engine. So 48K audio files running into a 96K mix engine is going to have more resolution than if it was running through a 48K mix engine. It's going to be more taxing on your computer, so you have to decide for yourself whether that's worth it for you. Okay, so anyway, there's that. And now I'm going to get back to what I called, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to create a group so I can easily and quickly trim these mix tracks, okay? So what I have is I'm not going to actually, anything that goes into a sub, like the drums, I'm going to just highlight the subs. So this, and this, oh, these can go away. These are redundant. So this, kick, snare, tom, kit, room, right? I'm not going to touch any of the reverb returns. We don't want to deal with those. While holding down Command, I grab all the percussion stuff. I grab all these little cymbal rolls, this riser. I don't grab the bass, amp, and DI. I grab the subs that they're going into, right? I grab all these acoustic guitars. I grab all the electric guitars. I grab all the keyboards. I grab, for this example, I'll grab the piano. Don't grab the lead vocals, grab the lead sub, right? Because it's going into a sub. And I refer to them as subs and alls, but they are all in effect augses, but a sub is something that goes in front of an all, if that makes sense. And you can call it whatever you want, just, you know, be methodical, do it the same way every time. I'm gonna grab all these guys. So now, I'm gonna create a group, I'm gonna call it track trim. And I'm gonna assign that track trim VCA that's a part of my template into there, right? So now, here's what I'm gonna do. Right now, my print,
are far behind.
my print track is on. So all those little guys that are going into subs, I'm gonna turn up a bit. Okay, so I'm gonna create a little mix here, right? Usually what I like to do is I get the kick going. Then I'll get the bass going. I want the high energy stuff. Get the overheads going. And also, when you're getting your levels, it's best to start on a chorus because the chorus is usually going to be louder than a verse. If you set your levels on the verse, the chorus is going to come in and you're going to run out of headroom. So I usually even like to start on chorus 2 because the bridge is oftentimes even louder than the chorus. We got the guitar fader up. Let's turn it down for a minute. Oh, it's because of that little guy we were testing. Okay, so let's start turning some tracks up. Washy. I'm going to fine tune it. What we want. Get that snare going. Get some other stuff going here. So it's pretty blown out right now. It's okay. The idea is turn this all the way down to make sure you're grabbing all the tracks. And now you have an easy trim control, right? Now if I pop this out, that's our finished mix. That's the mix that I received. Here's our rough mix. So we got some work to do. But the idea is that now we're starting figuring out where we need our headroom to be. Okay? And I'm going to open up another section and I'm going to show you a more refined version. And once I get it to where I'm happy, I coalesce that. So now my fader on that VCA trim goes back to 0. So now I can trim it some more. I'll keep trimming it, and as I add my parallel compression and all that stuff, I'm going to need to have that available. It's going to be important to have. So right now, I'm routed. I've merged my template with the multi-track, and now we're ready to get into the actual mixing portion. It's not to say that I'm not going to have to do more routing or more hunting for plugins, but in general, I kind of have the consoles ready to go, and now I can actually start mixing it. I think I pointed out when I was showing you my mix template that I have some tracks that are labeled samples, kick 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and I actually have some files in here that are, when the tracks are imported, these files are imported as well. So the way I do drum samples is a little different than I think a lot of people do it. But there's a few program applications out there or plugins like Trigger and Drumagog, and Sound Replacer was one. I don't know if they still make that, but all those are cool. They have their place. I think that they've probably come a long way. The way I like to do it, and I've learned this, I'm not the one who invented this technique, but learned it along the way, is what I'll do is I'll create like a little file right here, and I'm just going to consolidate an empty track, right? To create a little audio file here, I'm going to name it Sliver, because I just call it Sliver. I've already have that, so I'll just name it Sliver with a little underscore, right? Where'd you go? Right there. I'm going to cut it, so now it's in my clipboard, right? And I'm going to take this Sliver track and I'm going to put it right above my input, my kick input. And I'm going to group those together, and I'm just with a group called temp. And what this allows me to do, if you pay attention, I'm going to solo up this kick drum, is now I have a group with my kick sliver track and my kick in track. And I'm going to use the feature called tab to transient, which is right up here. And I'm going to just paste this sliver along on every kick drum, right? So we're cruising along. You got to get it right up to there. Oh, so you're it's kind of like doing it by hand. For a long time, Drumagog, for many years, Drumagog and Slate's Trigger did not exist. And this was the only way to add samples. Well, you could do, back in the tape days, what you would do is you would take your snare track and you'd put it so it was playing back off the sync head. So it was actually playing your snare track back early, and then you would feed that into like Elise's D4 or some sort of MIDI trigger, and then run that through a delay unit to get it into sync. And it sounded okay. Wasn't real accurate. Would flam a little bit here and there. But this way I find actually very accurate. It does a few things that I like. One is that I think it's more accurate than Trigger. I still feel like I hear some flams with Trigger, especially if you have a kick or snare sound that is heavily compressed to the point where the transient is not as sharp as it would be with an uncompressed signal. Sometimes it doesn't track quite right and you hear a flam. This way, I find it much more precise. It does not follow the dynamics. It's going to play back the same sample over and over, and it's not going to get louder or quieter as the track does. But for me, a sample, I don't want the sample to track the dynamics. I want the sample to even out the dynamics, to make the backbeat more consistent. So if a backbeat isn't consistent and you have Trigger playing back a sample louder and softer along with the real, it might sound more real, but it's not doing what I want it to do. So what I like to do is I like to drop this sliver in here, and I'm going to stop now, but I'm going to go through the whole song. But as you can see, I'm already, in the time I've talked, I'm already up to the chorus. The more you do it, the faster you get at it. I'm going to undo that group by making it inactive. Bring this down here. Command A to highlight all these guys right here. Drop that down. I'm going to suspend that group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that little sliver track and I'm going to copy and paste it on all 4 of my kick sample tracks. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to activate these so we can see them, is I have this little guy here. I'll drag that up here so I have it all on the screen. And this is one of the kick samples. I'll highlight it, and I see it up there, and I hold down a Shift and Command, click on it, and when you see it go across this yellow little sliver, you get this little thing, and this is a function called replace clip. It used to be called region replace, and I say replace all instances of the original clip. So everywhere I put that sliver in, it's going to now put that sample in. Oh wait, did I not do it right? Hang on. So highlight, you see how it goes yellow there? All instances of original clip, and now it's dropped that in. Now, I just do them one at a time. And undo, there you are. So these are 4 of my most useful kick samples that I drop in. And now I stopped, about a quarter of the way through because it's a boring video to watch me do that. But to do a kick, it depends on how complicated the track is, but to do a kick and snare sample and then fly in the samples using the clip replace function built into Pro Tools, it's in there, so you don't need to buy any extra plugins. Works really well. And I'm going to open up a session that has it completed so I can play you what it sounds like. Okay, so now I just opened up a session where I've completed it. So the slivers are, as you can see, are throughout the whole song. Here's the ones for the kick. Here's the ones for the snares. And what this gives me that I like is now, rather than having to open up a plugin, I have all my samples that I like are right here on a fader. So if I solo up my kick drum, and so then what I've come up with here is now I have this. That. Probably don't need that. This third one I decided I didn't like. And that's the one right there. So that's pretty good kick sound. Now let's hear our snare. And I think we're into the chorus coming up here. That's our snare. With that, or that. So I actually like both of these. That one there. And I have all my samples are on a VCA, so that way when I'm getting my overall snare drum sound, and I got all my samples in, I could just decide to turn the snare up or down, the sample up or down. If I decide that over a drum fill it sounds too machine-like, I can go in and I can just draw a little bit of automation right there on the VCA, and it'll turn all the samples down. It's really just about the backbeat that I want. I want the backbeat to be carved out. So let's hear what this sounds like.
Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave.
Then add the sample in.
I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life.
And the other thing you can do.
Take off, show me the stars. Away from the lights, away from the lights in the city. I'm flat broke.
You want to add more top end to your snare. If you do it with the sample, you're not adding cymbal hash. Sometimes I'll actually grab a snare drum from the track that I'm working on, and I'll add that into the samples as well. So that way it's more natural. It's more the sound that's in the room mics. But I can still have EQ and compression control without pulling up a bunch of room sound. So that's a quick little tutorial on how I do my drum samples. And because I've moved along and let's just say that I'm happy with those, I can take this and this out of here. As I go, as I mentioned before, I'm always sort of hiding tracks. trying to create less faders on the screen for myself to deal with. So that's the drum sound sort of in place. I guess what I'll tend to do here, and I have like I'll just take the entire drum kit and turn it on and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so I have my kick. Mute these. Here's my kick. Here's my kick and snare. So I'm riding that sample a little loud. I'll tuck it in a little bit. Okay. Add some overhead. Now, a lot of what I'm doing here is kick and snare go into this parallel compressor here. I'm going to turn it up a little too loud so you can hear it. So when you turn it up too loud, it sounds a little baked and silly, but underneath the track, you got this. So you're making it sound like the kick and snare are louder without actually making the kick and snare louder. And now I seem to be digging some of this stressor as well, but usually the 1176 is sort of like the leading one. Now that little drum sample went by, sounded a little funny and a little fake, but in the mix, it'll be cool. I think it'll be cool. I'm using a little bit of RMX16 on the snare drum just to add a little bit of tail, and you know, maybe that floor tom might be written up a little bit during the verse. We'll see. And let's hear how it sounds in the mix.
Say what you're thinking, I'm not gonna follow. I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave.
Pretty cool.
The city of flat broke. Show me the road to the good life.
So that's drums in a nutshell. I mean, if I'm gonna be thorough about it, let's just take a quick look here. I'm adding, not doing anything here really to the kick. Snare drum, probably adding a little bit of top, a little bit of upper mids, and a little bit of like 80 hertz. And I'm adding a little bit of compression. Oh, and a little bit more EQ over here. And sucking out like a little bit of, you know, 500 or so. And then backing it down with a trimmer. You know, the one thing, don't be scared to use more than one EQ. Don't be scared to use more than one compressor to get the sound that you want. You know, I usually have a few lined up and ready to go, and I usually EQ something a couple different times. If somebody comes in, if I get a session in, and it has their EQ settings on top of it, typically what I'll do is, rather than boosting their EQ settings more, I'll just open up another plugin behind it and EQ some more. And I'll do that for two reasons. If I get lost and I don't know, and I'm trying to get back to how it was given to me, it's much easier just to turn off one plugin than to go back and save copies and of the plugin settings and whatnot. So that's the drums in a nutshell. The one thing I tend to do is I don't spend too much time on any one instrument. I get the drums sounding reasonable, then I move on to the vocals, I move on to the bass, and I just kind of get them all in there, and then I keep touching them up and working with them all together, because oftentimes, in my experience, if I get the drums sounding amazing, and then I get the bass sounding amazing, and then I get all the guitars sounding amazing, and then the vocals sounding amazing, and then I put them all together, it's not amazing. Usually what I do is I kind of get the drums where they're sounding, you know, reasonable. Then same thing with the bass, vocals, guitars, and then I keep kind of going back and touching up. I don't want to spend too much time in solo because it doesn't really matter how anything sounds when it's soloed up. It matters how it all sounds together. So that's sort of my thing in a nutshell. So if I'm pretty happy with these drums, I'm going to take all these things that I didn't end up using, and I'll hide those, and slowly kind of getting this session distilled and having it make more sense. And again, it's a lot of tracks, but everything's sort of making sense. Here it appears as though there's a clap pattern. We'll hear it here in the intro. I'll play a little bit of it.
The city lights are far behind, and I can see it now.
So that, let's hear those claps on their own. So that's how they came in. And I thought they sounded okay.
And I can see it now.
But I wanted to hear a little bit more room, but I didn't want to add room. I wanted to see if there was any more room I could pull out of it by adding some reverb. So I used, what did I use here? The monster setting on the slate, which is sort of like an 1176 with all the buttons punched in. So let's hear that in solo and see the difference between those guys. You hear somebody laughing. It's all right. And let's take a look at our trimmer. I might trim this because it looks like it's... Ah, no, I'm pretty good.
Wheels up, head for the future. No more rust in here with the lifeless.
Looks like I wrote a little bit of automation on there, but in the intro, it's pretty cool. Let's hear our other mix. Let's hear our previous mix to see what they were going for. So that's the old mix. New mix. Old mix.
Far behind, and I can see it now that I'm on.
We're in range. I think that maybe I'll make it a little bit louder before the vocals come in. A lot of times with mixing, what you can do is you ride something a little hot when it first comes in, and then you tuck it back when the next element comes in, and your ear doesn't hear it as getting quieter, it just is paying attention to the new element. And that's one way that you can fit 80 tracks into a song and not have it sound like a complete mess. So I'm gonna just do this little ride here. And tuck it back.
The city lights are far behind,
And ride it down a little more.
and I can see it now that I'm on my
Sometimes give it a little boost on another section, like
wheels up, head for
the energy up.
future. No more rust in here with the lifeless. Dig deep, say what you think, and I'm not gonna follow. I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave.
and then I think that will be fine. I think we've moved on to other elements in the chorus. For example, that tambourine now is sort of our groove.
What you think,
Let's see
and I'm not
here.
gonna follow. I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road to the good life. The good life. The good life. Take off, show me
The tambourine's pretty cool. I think that when I hear it, the backbeat of it, let's hear it in solo. I want to hear more of the chunk, the in-between stuff. I want to hear the division of the beat a little bit more. So maybe what I'll do is I'll try to put a very fast compressor on there that will grab that backbeat and tuck it back a little bit. Let's hear what that sounds like in the mix.
Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the
A little bit better.
city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road to the good life. The good life. The good life. Take off, show me the
Okay.
stars.
So let's take a look and see what else we've done. So I'm fine with that for now. Might fine tune that a little bit. Bass guitar. Let's take a look at the bass guitar and see if there's anything fancy I did with that. The only thing I did was, and I do this all the time, almost to a fault, we have a bass DI, a bass and two bass amps. I just built a little blend of all three. A lot of times I'll just put a Sans amp on a bass DI just to give it a little bit more growl. My favorite setting is Itchy Bass in the Greg Fiddleman folder. Greg's a buddy of mine. He was amused when I told him that that was my go-to bass sound. He mentioned that he built it for, I think he was mixing some live Chili Pepper stuff. So the itchy thing is referring to Flea's bass. But let's hear it with and without. So without, good bass sound. A little more growl. But you don't lose any low end, which is nice. And I gotta say that with bass in general, that sounds like a distorted bass in a track. Now I don't even really hear the bass. Now I'm hearing more bass presence. It's subtle. The point is that a bass can growl a little bit in a track, and you don't hear it as like an aggressive distortion. It just helps you to hear the bass. It also helps you to hear the bass on smaller speakers. So a little bit of distortion, tasteful distortion, can be good on bass. The only other thing I think I remember doing here is when we get to the bridge. Let's take a look here. So when it gets to the bridge, on ascend, I have the bass sub. So remember, all the basses are going into a bass sub. I have a send that's called bass distortion, and that has either the decapitator or 3 presets of SansAmp that I like. And I'm using the first one, which I think is called Super Bass. Yes, Super Bass. I really can't stand like searching through menus when I'm trying to mix, so I just have the 3 that I like, and I just pop 1, 2, or 3 on, you know, and see which one I like. Usually it's Super Bass, and if that ain't working, then I'll try something else. Sometimes I have to flip that out of phase to sound right. Let's hear. See, that's a little scooped. That's actually better. So no out of phase on this guy. And that just helps the bridge seem a little bit bigger. And then I left it in on the last chorus. You know, back in sort of, you know, I wasn't making rock records in the 70s, but I was listening to rock records in the 70s, and it's my understanding that it wasn't uncommon that you, typically after the second chorus would be a guitar solo, and that amps the energy up even more. And then when you get to the last chorus after the guitar solo, if you have the same energy that you had in the chorus previous to the solo, it's going to feel like a letdown. And so it would not be uncommon to, on the guitar solo track, to just add 1 more guitar, playing the rhythm guitar or playing, you know, whatever was the guitar part that had the most energy, to keep the energy up. And so I try to do the same thing. On the last chorus of a song, you know, I'll either add another guitar track or I'll distort the bass and add it in. And the nice thing about doing it, the bass distortion is a send and return configuration as opposed to just dropping distortion on a insert, is that you're not changing the bass sound that's there, you're just adding something to it. And so the bass levels can only get bigger. So anyway, that's the bass in a nutshell. Synth bass, let me see if I did anything to that. Looks like I might have done something with the, just added a little bit of upper mid-range. Yeah, I think with this guy, I just want to feel the pulse of it more than we don't need more low end. I don't want to take the low end away from it. I'm glad for it to be there, but I just wanted it to poke out a little bit. It's not uncommon for me to add mid-range to instruments. It would seem counterintuitive, but it's not. Oh, and then here's one other thing I do is the bass guitar sub is going into, oh, you can't see, let me make sure you see it here, is going into a parallel bass compressor. And in this case, I think this thing is just, Yeah, this thing's just on all the time. So what I do is I automate the return. So this bass here, this parallel bass, it's just a little bit of Fairchild 660.
Far behind, and I can see it now that I'm on my own.
Usually you want the meter tickling a little bit, and then that gets a little louder in the chorus.
I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars.
Make the whole
I'm
track a little
ready
bit
to
bigger.
leave. I'm ready.
I do that a lot with, that's from you know, just learning from working with Joe Ciccarelli. That's a big thing that he does is parallel compression, getting it set, and then just boosting it in the chorus. Because sometimes the chorus, faders only go so loud. You have to create the illusion that everything's getting bigger. You sometimes you make it bigger and then you make the illusion as well, you know, because it's all about impact and keeping the energy up. And like verse 2 has to have more energy than verse 1 because now you're, and sometimes like these little breaks as a way of resetting the energy, you know, but that's a lot of that's what a lot of mixing is, more than EQ and setting compressors. You can't set a static mix, you have to move things along. So continuing on here, I saw these 8 acoustic guitar tracks and I just wanted to get them onto one single fader. And I wanted to treat these as one part. And I wanted them to be on one fader. So I ran them into this Augs right here that you're hearing. And I thought that I would maybe just add a little bit of reverb and some EQ to them, see if I could make them sparkle a little bit more. And these days, I enjoy a shortcut. I'll do any shortcut I can find. And I've really been enjoying some of these signature plugins, particularly the CLA one, and it has a setting called, and Shiny Acoustic is, I'm gonna play you what it sounds like with and without. There's this guy. So here it was before. So, you know, if you listen to that on your own, you think that might be too bright. Let's hear it, and I'm going to toggle it on and off during the mix. This is it on.
Far behind, and I can see it now that I'm on.
So some of that brightness that sounds too bright when you solo it up is what helps it cut through.
Head for the future, no more rust in here with the lifeless. Dig deep.
So that's that. Cheat to win, I call it. You know, I like to use particularly the CLA signature plugs for stuff like that, backing vocals. Lead vocal I'll focus on, and that'll be a custom sound for every song, for every singer. But stuff like that, why use 5 plugins to make that sound when you can just open up one and be done with it, move on. So these other guitars here, I believe these are the TP stands for Tim Pierce, session guitar player in town, very sought after, busy session guitar player. This is that redundant track. As you see, I have parallel compression on all these guys. A lot of times the stereo parallel compression, you want to make sure that you have this fader, send follows, mute, pan. I don't know what FMP stands for, but what it means is that however you've panned the track, the send will follow that panning, will match that panning on its stereo send out. So that way I can have a stereo return with compression on it, and I can, it'll keep things in the right perspective. So I'm just gonna solo up these guitars real quick. And here's what they sound like on their own. And then with a little bit of parallel compression. So it just boosts them up a little bit, makes them sound a little bit louder.
Away from the lights in the city, a flat broke.
Maybe a little bit more.
Show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life.
So you get the idea. I do the same sort of treatment on the keyboards. Keyboards have a little parallel compression. What is it, probably an 1176. You know, oftentimes on 1176, you have, you know, what's called like the Dr. Pepper, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then this all the way to the left and this all the way to the right. That's a great way to record, and it's a great way to mix. When you're using a compressor in parallel, a lot of these attack and release settings are more extreme than you would normally set them. In other words, you'll lay the attack back. You don't, because the direct signal gives you the attack of the sound. And what we're doing is we're doing a very compressed version that's snuck underneath them, remember? So when you do that, you don't have to have the slowest attack. You can have a faster attack. So oftentimes, a lot of these settings that you would use in parallel will look and behave differently. Sometimes 8-to-1 might sound too extreme on the track, but as a parallel setting, it might be cool.
Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave. The city, I'm flat broke. Show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life. Take off, show me the stars.
Helps add a little bit of just apparent volume to the track. Lead vocal. You know, it's funny. I would say that if I spend 4 hours in a mix, let's round off to the first half hour organizing, half hour to do the drums, hour to do the vocals. So where are we at there? Is that 3 hours? Okay, and then an hour to do everything else and blend them all together. The point being is that I'll spend at least, it feels like half the time, but I'll spend a lot of time on the vocals. And a lot of what I do is trying out different vocal chains, doing all this, you know, doing the rides. Right here, I have everything that I think I want to use on vocals. This one came together pretty quick. I like the Eosis de-esser. Sometimes I'll use it in front of my processing. Sometimes I'll use it after, depends. I like the RVox. Didn't feel like I needed to use it now. Sometimes the Pultec, sometimes the Fairchild, sometimes the Fab Filter. There's a cool plugin called Soothe that I use if the vocal's really harsh and piercing and strident. I'll sometimes use Soothe on overheads if the cymbals are too harsh. Fiddles. That anything that you want to make loud, but it hurts your ears when it's as loud as you want it to be, you can drop smooth on it, find a setting, and it helps quite a bit. But for this one, at least where I'm at now, I'm finding that the VMR is doing everything I want it to do. I'm overusing the Slate distressor just because it just came out, and I'm impressed with it. I think it sounds a lot like my distressor. Adding a little bit of air, adding a little bit of mid-range, a little bit of high-pass filter, taking out a little bit of the lows. And what I do often is, in general, I try to get the vocal where I want it with EQ and compression, and ignore if it's. I'm not going to dial in a sound. If I dial it in and it sounds good to me, but it's making the S's too, and the T's and all the consonants too strident and too hard, I'll live with that for a minute. I get the compressor and the EQ where I want it to be, and then I'll go through a track and I'll turn down the S's. So, you know, the first line of defense with S's is your de-esser, but that's still not going to catch everything. And really the best de-esser in the world is clip gain. And you'll see, like, for example, right here,
And I can see it now.
you know, knock that down 3 dB, maybe go 4, 5, 10 dB if you need to, and just go through.
And I can see it now that I'm on my own.
Let's see here.
Wheels up, head for the future. No more
Let's see, what did I do here? Future. Let's see what's going on with future. Probably, let's heal that and see what a lot of times what I get, come on now. Yeah.
the future.
If I hear like too much spit, I'll oftentimes just go and I'll find the non-spitty part I'm just flipping through playlists here. Like that little thing right there sounds not as sexy to me as versus. So let's check this one out. That first one was pretty subtle. Thinking. Let's see where it was at before. Let's do this. Get back to the original. Arg. I want this to be standard. Okay, that thinking right there. See that? All that spit. I don't want that. So it's cleaner. So the point is that, like, I'll get in there. It's like flossing. You know what I mean? You just got to get in there and work the track. You know, just deal with all your consonants, deal with all your breaths, you know, turn breaths down if you need to. Usually when you get the compressor the way you want it in a modern track, it's usually, you have to deal with the consonants.
I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to
So let's listen a bit here.
I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke, show me the road.
Okay, so that's city.
Leave the city. I'm flat
Not bad.
broke, show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life. Take off, show me the stars. Away from the lights, away from the lights in the city. I'm flat broke, show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life.
Keep listening.
Fast and fake are far behind, are far behind.
The B right there, that B is a little bit hard. It looks like I took a little bit of, it probably popped it a little bit. Sometimes I'll just put a high pass filter over P's and B's and anything that's too harsh. Rather than automate them, I'll just go into Audio Suite and just take, like, you know, high pass filter at 150 and just process just that one little piece. I think that B was a little hard, so I'm actually going to just put a little fade on there. Getting better. Let's see if I can go more extreme. Sounds smoother.
Far behind, and I can hear
That breath, knock that guy down about 5 dB. You want the breaths because they sound natural.
and I can hear the wind saying it will be alright.
This can come down just a touch. None of this stuff's too bad. I might let some of this stuff go, but I'm gonna just tackle it now for demonstration purposes.
The wind saying it will be alright now. Wheels up, head for the future. No more rust in here with the lifeless. Dig deep, say what you're thinking. I'm not
Right
gonna
there.
what you're thinking.
Right, I'm thinking I hear a little bit of spit,
What you're thinking.
and I can see it, and I don't want it there. So I just grab a little piece right there, move it over there, move it over there, and there, and there. Get all that spit out of there. Crossfade it. Let's hear what that sounds like.
What you're thinking. I'm not gonna fall.
So, you know, might be being nitpicky, but that sounds better to me. So
Say what you're thinking. I'm not gonna follow. I'm not gonna follow. Take off.
I think that can come down a touch. That little breath there. Let's hear one more chorus.
Follow. Take off. Show me the stars. I'm ready to leave.
That's really the offender right there, that show.
Take off. Show me the
Knock that down, maybe 6 dB.
Take off. Show me the stars.
A little better, not worse.
Ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road.
See,
The city. I'm
See, this S on the city sounds fine to me. But the show me the ropes sounds too loud. So I'm going to tuck that in as well. Let's see, 5 dB seems to do it. Same thing here. Knock that down a little bit.
Take off, show me the stars, away from the lights, away from the lights in the city. I'm flat broke, show me the road to the good life, the good life, the good life. I want the night sky magic, I want the patient light. I need a new perspective from on the other side. Wheels up, head for the future.
Okay, here's an example right here. If you hear the energy drops on this little break here,
From on the other side. Wheels up, head for the future. No more rust in here with the lifeless.
so I just took all the effects on the lead vocal and just with one fader turned them down. Now I might split the difference. That sounds a little too dry to me, so I'm gonna.
Wheels up, head for
better.
the future. No more rust in here with the lifeless. Dig deep, say what you think, and we're not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city.
Okay, and so other than that, on the vocal, I'm also doing a little bit of parallel compression on the vocal. I'm using a combination of a little bit of 1176 throughout the whole song, and then I'm boosting a little bit of a Fairchild 660 on the choruses of that, and that's all being fed from the lead vocal sub right here. You see that the send is the parallel lead vocal, so that goes there. Lead vocal throw. I'm not hearing any words that I need to throw, which is rare. I usually do, but we'll get rid of that as well. And that means that this tag echo isn't being used. And everything I turn off, remember, everything I turn off with a plugin on it is saving me some DSP, which is good. That didn't come up, so we're going to leave that be. Looks like this mod is not coming up. I think I went through all this stuff before, but yeah, I use, on this song, for example, I'm using a plate, sounded better to me. I either use a plate or a 224 Lexicon UAD plugin. On this one, I'm using a plate, so I'm going to turn off the 224, save myself some DSP. Here's all the prints of the effects from the first mix. I think we're cool. I don't think we need that. If somebody comes back and they say, hey, make it just like that first mix, I'll pull them up again. De-esser on the vocal double. Usually, if the lead vocal, I deal with all the S's, with a combination of a de-esser and the clip gain as I was showing you. The backing vocals, the harmonies, when in doubt, throw a de-esser on it. If you solo it up and it sounds like the singer has a lisp, it's fine because it's backing the lead singer. And so if you get a buildup of S's, use a de-esser. You can be more heavy-handed on the backing vocals than you can on a lead vocal. A lead vocal, if you're too heavy-handed with the de-esser, it will make it sound like the speaker or the singer has a speech impediment, which you don't want. Let's see here. Backing vocals are all pretty straightforward. Nothing too special going on. Looks like I did like a little edit here. Let's hear what I did.
I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke. Show me the road.
So it looks like I took out like a little part of that. Let's hear it with it and see if we miss it.
I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city. I'm flat broke. Show me.
that? I don't feel like we miss it. I don't feel like it's, so in that case, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave it out. And if somebody misses it, they'll let me know. Come on. Hello. And gray out. There we go. Great. And let's see, what am I doing? Background vocal B. I just sent all those. To this fader right here, because this is all one part as far as I'm concerned. And I just want it all in one fader just to blend that in. And that's going into, let's see what we got this going into. Looks like we have it going into a few things. SSL. And what are we doing with this guy? Let's see. I don't remember engaging that. I don't think that was supposed to be there. I'm gonna take it out. 560, just taking out mid-range. It's actually the opposite of what I often do with vocals. A lot of times on oohs and ahs and backing vocals, especially on a busy mix, if you listen to this.
I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave.
So that part is like its own part that syncopates with the lead vocal. It's not a callback. So if I want that to be loud and present, if I take this, put this 1K back.
I'm not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to leave.
To my ears, that's too much going on in the mid-range. So if I want that loud and to feel the presence of that, I'm gonna take a little of the 1K out of the backing vocal so I can ride the fader up a little louder so it can seem as though it's as loud as it needs to be. And for whatever reason, I like the 560 for cutting out 1K on vocals. So that's what I used. And that's pretty straightforward. So after that, all that goes into these alls, and these alls are grouped together, and I can use that to trim the entire mix some more if I want. And the only other thing that we have going on here on these alls is I use this Slate VCC, which is Virtual Console Collection. Waves has one called NLS, and that one's a good one as well. I like that one. I think I like this one a little bit better. This is this one, and I own this one, so that's why I'm using it. Basically what it is all these tracks are going into these subs with the VCCs, which just add a little bit of harmonic distortion, a little bit of like what you would get if you had an analog console with transformers. And it just helps it sound more like a finished record. And from there, the only other fancy thing is I do have these parallel compression that I add later, which is a combination of a kick and snare, which comes in this fader, fed from the kick and snare sub, and this bass guitar. So the best way to hear this is to, let's see, let's go into pre-fader, listen.
Not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars.
Oh, and I got a little bit of lead vocal going in there as well. So that's like just a very compressed kick, snare, bass guitar going into this 1176, which is blended into the track. Also going into an LA2A. Going into this clang helm. Kind of cool. Let's move that meter a little bit. And it seems as though I'm using the Zener limiter now. If you listen to any one of these things, they sound way too compressed. But remember, they're being blended into the track. So that's with them gone. That's with them. That just gives the track a little bit more meat, a little more punch. My VCA is right here, which I can easily turn whole sections of things on and off. So here's our drums, drum track, bass, all the guitars.
I want the patient light.
So, you know, when you get a mix and you get it together, and then you're sending it to you're sending it to possibly the producer, maybe not. Maybe oftentimes these days, a track will be produced and then it's sent to a mixer, and at that point it's between the mixer and the label, the mixer and the manager, the mixer and the artist. But there's a lot of people to approve your mix. Then once the mix is approved, you have to send alternate mixes to the label. And at the very least, you'll do a vocal up and a vocal down. You'll do a TV mix. TV mixes are often referred to as everything but the lead vocal. That's one definition of a TV mix. Another definition of a TV mix is no lead vocals that say words. And by that, any oohs and ahs or woes are in the TV mix, but any harmonies that are harmonizing and singing the lyrics can't be in the TV mix. That's what I tend to use as a TV mix. But with all these VCAs, you can quickly do if you do 0.7 dB vocal up, 0.7 dB vocal down. If you want to do a more bass mix, you can go a dB up. And so you can very quickly, when you're at the point where you're printing your alternate versions of your track, that's where I use these VCAs the most to create and generate those tracks with precision. If you have to go into the subs or into the individual tracks and say that the lead vocal landed at -3.5, and then you want to do a vocal up mix, then you have to think -3.5, so what would that be, 2.7, and you have to do all this extra math. This is, bam, 0 right there. You can see exactly where it needs to be. So that's that. And then I guess finally we'll get back into what's on my mix bus. And on this track, well, this is also something worth mentioning here. Let me point out, I was talking about how you have to, the chorus. Someone one time described to me a chorus needs to feel like like you're in a room and someone turned the light on. And to get that sort of impact and energy, sometimes you do all the things that I was mentioning with parallel compression that you boost up. You might add a little extra distortion onto the bass. You might add a little distortion onto a guitar. Some of those things are done in the mix. Sometimes some of that stuff is already done for you in the production. But one thing, if you still don't feel like you're getting enough, or if you really want to exaggerate it, you take your mix insert and, well, you don't turn up the chorus, you actually turn down the verses. Because for me, I don't want to see any fader in my Pro Tools session go above 0. If any of my faders, the way I run the gain of my Pro Tools system, if any fader goes above 0, it means that I have a gain staging problem. So for me, to make a chorus louder, what you'll see here is that I have the intro in verse 1 down 1.5 dB, and I have verse 2 down 1.5 dB. Sometimes that might only go to 1 dB. Maybe we don't need to go that extreme. Sometimes, it didn't come up here, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll take that one out. So that way, this verse is getting a touch quieter as it goes on, but in a way that's imperceptible to the ear, but it'll still make that downbeat of that next chorus hit harder. It looks like I'm doing a little bit of that with the pre-chorus 3. Let's hear that and see.
Wheels up, head for the future. No more rust in here with the lifeless. Dig deep, say what you think, and we're not gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready.
It looks a lot more drastic than it sounds, so you can be bold with this stuff, Let's hear this transition.
Take off, show me the stars. I'm ready to
Sounds good to me.
fast and fake.
So throughout this whole verse, the entire mix is turning down a touch. So when the next chorus comes in, hits hard.
Be alright.
And
Wheels up, head for the future.
And then let's talk about what we have on the mix bus. So my mix chain on this song, and it changes from time to time, and it might be some of this, might be all of this, or some combination. But I'm going through the VCC. Then I have that going into the Slate. This is Slate's version of an SSL. I really like the new UAD SSL, the updated version. I think it sounds better than their legacy version of their SSL bus compressor. And it also has a couple features that this has that I like a lot, which is it has a mix. Well, the biggest thing is the mix function. So you can be feeding uncompressed version, like right here I have it set at 50-50. So like rather than doing less compression or doing less gain reduction, you get the gain reduction where you like it and where you like what I kind of call the action, which is like the movement and the sound of it pumping in a musical way. But rather than splitting the difference on that by opening up the threshold, you're actually just tilting the mix towards a more natural uncompressed version. And then there's also a side chain high-pass filter. So this way, no low end is pumping the compressor, which is nice. And it sounds fantastic on the UAD. I just haven't bought it yet. But so yeah, I sometimes use this, I sometimes don't. I'm almost always using the Shadow Hills. Let's take a look and see how hard I'm hitting.
Ready to leave. I'm ready to leave the city of flat road.
Okay, so you can see on this Shadow Hills, it's only going about a dB into compression and it's moving. It's just tapping it. So I'm not really using it for compression. I'm just using it for the sound of the plugin itself. And the real unit sounds very good, and I think that this is a very good representation of it. Then that's now going into a curve bender, and a curve bender is usually just boosting a little bit of low end, boosting a little bit of top end. This is living at 90. Sometimes it's 50, but for this mix, I like 90 better. If it's something that's slower, sometimes like a slower tempo, I'll do 50. If it's more hip hop, I don't really mix hip hop, but if it has more of that flavor, I might do 50. Sometimes I'll boost some 2.8 or 3K. I guess I didn't feel like I needed to do that on this mix. I used to do a lot of cutting of the lower mids, and Joe Ciccarelli talked me out of that. Like, don't do that. And it was a hard habit to break. It's like when you're a kid and you're driving in your car, and you turn up the bass and you turn up the treble on your car stereo. It seems like it sounds better, and then you slowly learn to leave those flat and just turn up the overall volume, and that's going to sound better. It's just sometimes we all get into these little habits of things that we think sound better, and whenever you reduce, you cut out like 150 or 300 or even 400, it takes the cloud out of things and it makes them sound clear. But that's also where a lot of like the first and second harmonics, the fundamentals of the note, especially on smaller speakers, what you hear on smaller speakers, if you don't have that band of music represented, sometimes like you can't hear the chord of the music, and it just doesn't sound musical. And so if you feel like you have to constantly be cutting out 300 or 150 in your mix to clear it up, try to fix it some other way, but try not to do that. I also used to high pass filter all my mixes at like 35 hertz, thinking to myself that I'm going to cut out all the rumble because it's not musical, and maybe that'll give me a little extra headroom to print my mix a little hotter. And that was another bad habit that I got out of. Don't really cut anything out of the low end or top end. Leave it all there. Perhaps the mastering engineer, might choose to do that, but give them all the sound. The client's paying for all the sound, so give them all the sound. So that's the curve bender. I've been into this clariphonic parallel equalizer. Let's hear a little bit of that. This is kind of cool.
I'm ready to leave.
Very subtle setting.
The city of flat.
Just sounds a little flatter,
Good life.
just a little less exciting.
Good life. Take
Adds just a touch more finish. I'm going to just turn it up too loud.
lights away from the lights in the
So I mean, it's getting brittle now, but that clarity,
good life. The good life.
judicious use of it sounds good to me. It adds a little bit of finish to the track. And then I'll often, and this is about 50-50, I'll go into
I'm ready to
a tape simulator.
ready to leave the city.
Without, sounds good without.
Road to the good life.
Just sounds a little more familiar to me with it in. Just a little, again, it's actually on the other end. The way it shapes the low end makes it sound a little bit more like a finish to me. And then that, as I'm monitoring, is going to go into an Oxford limiter,
I'm ready to leave.
which is adding my level. Not a ton, but here it is without.
Road to the good life.
Here it is with.
Life, the
And when you're making MP3s and refs for clients, you know, it's, I don't make the rules, but the world we live in is that you have to have them up to a certain level. You know, when I print my mixes, they don't look like a brick, but they don't look far from a brick. And that would lead me to my next thing, which is, you know, when you have a rough mix here or a mix, you know, anything that you're mixing, whatever the reference is, and I'm gonna A B here. We're gonna go up to, like, say, chorus 2.
follow. Take off, show me the
Here's the original mix.
I'm ready to leave the city.
Here's the new mix.
Go, show me the road to the good life. The good
The old mix,
life. Take off, show me the stars.
the new mix.
Lights away from the
Now, whenever you're in this situation, whatever mix that you send to your client has to be, doesn't have to, like, obliterate the other mix in volume, but it has to be a touch louder. If it's not going to be a touch louder, it might be a better mix. It might be a more finished mix. It might master better once it's mastered. But even if the rough mix was a terrible mix, your mix has to be louder. If somebody, say for example, you know, sometimes musicians will make their own rough mix where they're not paying attention to gain structure at all. They're not looking at meters, and they do a terrible mix, but that mix is brick-walled and loud. You're going to really struggle to get a mix past that, because whenever anyone's comparing mixes A to B, the louder one at first is always going to sound preferable to a person who's comparing those mixes. So if you get yourself in a situation where a mix is loud because somebody wasn't paying attention and they were just redlining the entire mix, but it sounds harsh and it sounds amateurish, but the file was printed loud, you have a choice of you try to figure out a way to make it sound as loud but good, or you might have to have a conversation with that person and say, like, listen, if I try to make my mix as loud as the one that you're used to hearing, it will be, I won't be able to give you the best mix I can give you. But if you trust me that my mix is going to make it through mastering sounding better and will sound like a better finished product, you just don't always have a chance to get that conversation in. So that's something you have to be aware of, and there's no perfect way around it, but it's just the nature of it. That's it, really. It's very rare that a version 1 is the approved mix. You might have to do version 1, version 2. And so, you know, because we are printing into a track, you know, I'll take this and I'll call this song, it's called City Lights. I say City Lights, you know, KS Mix 1. And I print that track, and then I'll create, you know, KS Mix 2 for the next time. And when you have them all on a track, you can just flip your playlist and you can A/B between different versions of the mix, or the rough mix or the scratch mix, to get where you need to be. And when you're all done, export out 16-bit 44.1, and that's what you send to your client. I really recommend sending waves over MP3s. They sound a little bit better. And well, a lot better actually. But if a client just says MP3 is fine, you know, it does not take long to upload a wave file. And so, you know, and you can use WeTransfer. That's what I use. It's free. And okay, I guess the last thing to look at is, you know, when you get a mix to a certain point and you're doing your EQ and you're doing your compression and you're getting it all in place, the only other way to, really the next step that you have to do is you have to ride some faders, and I've done a little bit of that here. I'll just go down the line. For one thing I like to do is they have like an overdub cymbal crash on the top of the chorus, and that's cool. I'll often take the overhead
gonna follow. Take off, show me the stars.
just do a little boost right on the downbeat to boost up that little crash cymbal. And I do that in each one. Nothing's illegal about it. You're not gonna get arrested. So just ride that crash to make that first crash of the cymbal just a little bit louder. That always helps add a little bit more excitement, makes the chorus sort of explode out of the speakers a little bit more. I did this little ride on the claps, as we talked about. Sometimes you can create the illusion that something's going to be as loud in the whole song by just really featuring it in the moments that it's in. This is, these aren't really rides, but these are fader moves of just parallel compression, louder on the choruses and in the verses. These rakes on the guitar here.
Follow, take off, show me the stars.
I like to have those a little louder. Looks like I rode these guys up here a little bit. Get the beginning of the chord, and then tuck it in a little bit.
Away from the lights, away from the lights in the city. I'm flat broke, show me the road to the good life, the good life.
You see all these little rides here are me just kind of trying to find little counter melodies and little things and passing the baton back and forth. If you leave all the faders just static, just laying there, you're going to always feel like you need to take something away or that things are going to be fighting each other. But actually what you're doing is kind of what I call sleight of hand. And that's the way you get 80 tracks to fit into a mix, to fit out 2 speakers. And this one sort of has, sometimes it has it done in the arrangement and you don't need to do as much of this, but, do what you need to do to make it happen and make it work. See the little rides in the piano? I can turn that up in this little section here. Vocal rides are always appreciated. Did some little rides on these bridge choruses. A lot, for my ears, when it comes to a bridge harmony, I feel like harmonies can almost be as loud as the melody line in bridges. I think they sound more exciting. It's a bit of a gear shift. And then the only other thing I was going to mention is, and this is actually a good way to wrap it up, is here's the way this song ended. Let's hear the original mix, the song ending. It's a good ending. Nothing wrong with that. I like that ending. It's sort of like the effect of like pulling the table out and all the tablecloth out, but all the glasses and dinnerware are all still in place. To my ears, I felt like I needed to hear that tonic on that bass. So I found that note ringing out maybe like right before the breakdown, and I added it in. And that kind of falls under, I've said it before, but so we'll take a look here and see exactly what I did. I think the bass just the bass just cut out. So here's the way the song ended. That's cool. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I want to hear that. I'm a knucklehead. I want to hear that last note. And so I put it in. Sounds a little more finished to me. I'd rather ask for forgiveness and permission. If they don't like it, they'll tell me they don't want it, that they like the previous version. I'm glad to take it out. But I'm always gonna, I'd rather have a note of me doing something and trying something than me not going. I'd rather go too far than not far enough. And you might be saying to yourself, why are you worried about the ring out of a song? Who cares about the ring out of a song? At this point, I've heard this chorus 3 times. The ring out isn't going to make or break the song, and that's true if this song was only ever going to just be for people to just listen to, enjoy. A way to recoup your production costs these days is to try to get a song synced. And if you want to get a song synced on a television show or a commercial or any sort of, of those types of licensing opportunities, I feel like you should have a nice ring out so that music editor always has a chord that you can go to ring out. A fade out or some really artful suspended chord might be cool, and I might actually like that better. But as far as syncing goes, it's worth taking the time to make sure that the ring out's right. And being as that's the end of the song, that's the end of this mix lesson. That's it. Thanks for your time. I hope all this made sense. Thanks for watching.